Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that keeping with the theme of this evening, both Kenny and myself were 70 years old, okay? And the theme of this evening is the jazz master and the younger person coming up. Kenny was born in June the 9th, and I was born December 9th, so he's 6 months older than me. Our next NEA Jazz Master inductee, class of 2014, he's a dear friend of mine for more than 50 years. When we deal with April 15, we all know that's tax time. But more important, that's Richard Davis's birthday. And he is more important than Internal Revenue because he's older than them. I'd like to have you watch something about the life of this jazz master that joins Milt Hinton, Ray Brown, Ron Carter, and Percy Heath in the bass chair of the NEA Jazz Masters. Mr. Richard Davis.
So you have something that is shaped like a woman, and you have something that sounds like a woman in certain registers, and with the passion that you're trying to get out of the instrument, you're really making love to the instrument. Why the bass? I was just enthralled by the sound. The bass was always in the background, and I was a shy kid, so I thought maybe I'd like to be in the background.
The leaves of brown came tumbling down, remember?
1954, I was 24 years of age, and I went to New York.
In the rain.
I felt very nervous. I felt shy. I'm playing with all these greats who've been around for years.
September in the rain.
At the University of Sarah is the best way I can describe it. That was a learning experience in music that I had never conceived before.
The raindrops seem to play.
Because she was so musical. I went everywhere with her.
Though spring is here to me, it's still September.
And everywhere was a sensation. Bernstein I spent a year with, playing in the New York Philharmonic. When he conducted, man, he felt like you were the only one on the stage with him. He was conducting you. Guy walks up to me. He said, "My name is Eric Dolphy." He said, "Are you working this weekend?" I said, "No." He said, "Now you are." And I said, "Man, this is it." And we were playing and playing and playing, and the music was so free. I recorded at least 3,000 recordings over a period of, I don't know how many years. Good players will say, don't specialize and focus on one music, do it all. That's what's so good about New York. playing in different atmospheres, different ensembles, different kinds of music. And that's what made it so much fun.
Now, Richard is a very eclectic musician. As you saw him there with Eric Dolphy, you saw him with Leonard Bernstein. Besides being a wonderful bassist, he's a great educator, composer, a major activist in the city where he's living, Madison, Wisconsin. When you think of the names, Ahmad Jamal, Benny Goodman, Sarah Vaughan, Eric Dolphy, Thad Jones, and Mel Lewis, we were part of that band. Monday night, this is before the Village Vanguard. We rehearsed every Monday night at midnight. Richard was in the band. I was in the band. That's where we got to meet each other. We had known each other before on record dates. As he said, he's done more than 3,000 records, but he's also done many commercial jingles. And that's where we would see each other every now and then. So in 1965, we worked with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. In what year was that? Somewhere, let me see. Oh, yeah. You can't help me. We worked also with a number of other people, but Richard, adding to those names, we have people that he worked with, like Bruce Springsteen and Van Morrison and John Lennon. And I said he's a very eclectic musician. Add to those names Igor Stravinsky, Leonard Bernstein, Pierre Boulez. Very, very important people in music. He said that he recorded over 3,000 records. I'm happy to say that I know him from being on a couple of them. In 2004 and 2005, we did a series of records in tribute to Mr. Thad Jones. Richard played his heart out on those records on the IPO label. He won the Downbeat poll from 1967 to 1974, every year. He's the founder of the Richard Davis Foundation for young bassists, ages 3 to 18, that he's managed to bring in master bassists to teach them in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a coal city. And because Madison, Wisconsin is a coal city in more than one way, he founded the Wisconsin Institute for the Healing of Racism. So I'd like to say, welcome, Richard, to the more than 136, I think it is, Jazz Masters. Welcome. I love you.
Well, it's hard for me to make short speeches, but I will attempt. Well, first of all, I was born at a lucky time, 10 years after the classical period of jazz, which was 1920. I was born in 1930. So I've gone through the metamorphoses of different styles and decades of the jazz music, as it's called. Jazz musicians really don't like to think about it being called jazz. A lot of the ones I know think about it as being our music. It's a cultural thing, and to put a name on it limits it to a degree. It's really the role of a black person in white society. Now, 1930s, when I was born, I started listening to music that my mother brought from New Orleans on the old wind-up Victrolas. And on those recordings that she brought from New Orleans was Louis Armstrong. So that was the first experience I had, was listening to Louis Armstrong playing out of New Orleans. And there were words on there that would floor you if I would quote what I heard on some of those recordings. So then, when I started playing in 1945, I started playing boogie woogie. That was all you heard, was boogie woogie blues. And I thought that was it. I thought I had finally made it, playing a chorus of boogie woogie blues. And then here comes this guy named Charlie Parker. And he was playing. I said, wow, I got to learn how to play that too? He upset everybody. Everybody. I mean, the finest of musicians would say, what is he doing? But it was a challenge too to try to learn that. Some people called it bebop. I called it hard to play. That's the 40s period. And the 50s period, another music began to creep in. Like I said, I was born at a good time to be enveloped in all of those musics. Here comes the 1950s. Here comes the 1960s. So in the 1950s, I was working with one of the most scholarly universities in the world. And that's because I was working with Sarah Vaughan. Lord have mercy. And with her was Roy Haynes, a jazz master, and Jimmy Jones. Now, and I'm hearing all this stuff. Jimmy Jones will play all these chords, man. And I'm saying, what is he doing? And I used to stand and peep at his left hand so I could get at least one note. And then I began to hear what he was doing, and I began to interpret that. And I felt like I had graduated when he said, what's that you did? I said, I got that from you. He said, oh, you know. And then he would put his hand on the piano sometimes. I said, what chord was it, Jimmy? And he'd say, let me see. Then he described the chord to you. So then I knew that the sound was more important than analyzing what it was. You analyze it later so you explain to someone else. And so then I began to listen to sounds. And I stayed there for about 6 years. And I began to get kind of anxious because I was beginning to hear other things. Mind you, I'm from Chicago too. Richard Holly Abrams from Chicago. But the leader for me at that time in Chicago, before I left, was Sun Ra. And my friends brought him to my house. I'd never seen him, never heard of him, never met him. And the first, is that Roy up there? God. Roy. But Roy. Yeah, Roy. Yeah. Well, see, you learn a lot from these guys that you're hanging out with. Roy was very smart. He taught me how to economize. He would come off with the least amount of check when we ate out. And he was the first black guy that I met who owned a house. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going out there and help Roy paint that house. She said, why? I said, because I honor the fact that he has one. And I'm going to promote that. He must have about 10 or 12 of them by now. But I was so amazed that here's this guy I work with has his own house. Lord have mercy. I'm staying in the white MCA, you know, eating ginger snaps for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But that taught me a whole lot. And he was very kind to me. Gave me cues on how to exist on the road. And Jimmy Jones, Lord have mercy. The harmonic values that he gave to me were unbelievable. So then after about 6 years with Sarah, I said, it's time for me to go somewhere else. But I didn't know where to go. But I knew there was something in my ear. The sound was in my ear. And lo and behold, he came to me. He saw me on the elevator platform, subway platform. He said, you Richard Davis? I said, yeah. He said, I'm Eric Dolphy. Eric Dolphy? Yeah. He said, are you working this weekend? No. Now you are. And with him, I began to experiment with nuances, dynamics, dissonances that I had never imagined before. And it created something into me that was so free. But I mind you, to be free, you have to have discipline. And the teacher who taught me all that, my high school teacher was Walter Henry Dyett. His most popular student, matter of fact, they closed the city down one day and called it Walter Dyett Day. But his most popular student, every time Christmas comes around, chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Nat King Cole. That was his most popular student. And then there was Johnny Griffin, Gene Ammons. I was a freshman when Johnny Griffin was a senior, and he was like a tyrant on that saxophone. I saw him coming down the hallway one day. I turned around and went the other way. He was scary. But then all of a sudden you find yourself working with some of these people who scared you. And that's what they wanted to promote. I remember when I worked with Gene Ammons, I was dating this woman at the time, and I got this call, and somebody said, Gene Ammons wants you to work with him. And I almost threw the phone down. She said, what's wrong with you? I've never seen you so excited. I said, do you know who that is? She did not. Come to the concert. And Gene got out there, and he hit the first note. And the people said, wow, Gene is back. So you have all these experiences in your background that makes you say you have to take the tradition and take it further and help the younger people who are coming up to continue that. And that's why I went to Wisconsin. Because Martin Luther King said, no need to have any knowledge if you're not going to share it. Yeah. And I told my mentor, Milt Hinton, who just babied me when I went to New York, I said, Milt, I'm going out to this place called Madison. I never heard of it before. I said, I'm going out there to teach. You know, you crying like a baby? He grabbed me in his arms and said, Richard, I'm so happy that you decided to do that, because people who are doing it and people who are teaching what they're doing, it's a plus. And he gave me all he could to go out there with tapes of people he recorded who were born in 1910, 1920. You might have heard of Perry Bradford. He gave me all those tapes that he had collected down in his basement. So the tradition continues as long as you don't feel competitive toward the younger person or another person of different talents. It projects what we're seeing here tonight. Thank you.
And now we have the privilege of hearing Richard Davis perform a solo improvised piece. We have that privilege. Thank you. Okay. We're going to continue with some more music, performing one of the classic jazz standards, Kenny Dorham's Blue Bossa. Please welcome back to the stage Mr. Warren Wolf, Chris Bowers, Yasushi Nakamura, Mark Whitfield. You all tired? Come on, now give them something. Give them something. Mark Whitfield Jr. And the master saxophonist, Mr. Joe Lovano.
And now, our final video tribute of the evening, Keith Jarrett.
The genesis to actually being a jazz player came from my desire to change notes in other people's music. So Mozart, I would be studying and playing a piece, and I'd say, I don't really think this is the exact right voicing for this chord. And when I first heard jazz, I realized that it was almost like expected of the player to find those notes that were his. When I'm out there and there's just a piano, it's like my body knows exactly what to do. It's just like my left hand knows how to play. And if I tell it what to play, I'm stopping it. It's this. Not only am I stopping it, but I'm stopping it from playing something better than I can think of. This is like being oversaturated with input. And it actually comes through your entire body. And people ask me, you know, why I make the noises I make when I play. Anybody in their right mind would try to find an outlet somewhere. So, you know, like if something's really happening, the passion just takes over. Audiences think I don't like them. But the truth is, I need them more than almost any other performer that comes onto the stage in front of them. I just need them to do a few simple, you know, easy things. Try to concentrate. The principle in this trio has been the same from 1983 to 30 years later. It's been exactly the same. It's the sidemen that have the freedom. The leader is always the leader. I wanted to be my own sideman too. I thought, okay, I have these two wonderful players. They're gonna know what to do. What if we just start playing? And the only way to do that would be either totally free playing or music we already know. There is an amazing amount of music that was never played. What I'm seeking is that. This music that's in the air that is ready to be played at all times. You know, that's why I show up at a concert.
To say a few words about Keith Jarrett, I'd like to invite up to the podium Kenny Barron. He's going to read a letter from 2005 NEA jazz master George Wein.
I had the pleasure of meeting Keith for the very first time backstage after 50-something years. So, anyway, this is from George Wein, and it says, Keith, I am truly very sorry I can't be here to make the NEA Jazz Masters presentation in person. I just got back from the foot doctor, and it's very difficult for me to walk. I wanted to say that this award is long overdue. You're one of the true masters of the piano and fully deserve this recognition. I first heard you with Charles Lloyd's quartet, and you were already a master, as did I. And quite a few years ago, you shared a double bill at Avery Fisher Hall. Then it was Philharmonic Hall, which might have been Thelonious Monk's last public concert. You acknowledged Thelonious musically in one of your most beautiful sets I ever heard. I will never forget it. I was even going to have a little fun with you and say that at your concerts, a good cough never goes unheard. Keith, again, I apologize, and I'm proud to present you with this distinguished award, NEA Jazz Masters.
Well, I don't need any of these. Let's see. It's a lot about education. I don't need any of that. Music is not something you can use words to describe. Music is either in the air and you find it, or it is in the air and you don't find it, but you just don't try hard enough. You can be educated to play the piano, you can be educated about chords, you can be educated about scales, you can be educated about everything there is to do with music, and you are still zero until you let go of what holds you back. And all of us could possibly not be held back, but most of us don't let it happen. My job, in my opinion, is to let it out. But I don't believe that there's any rules. There are no rules. So you need to, gather a bunch of stuff together, and then you go, sorry, what does my left hand do best? Well, why don't I ask my left hand? That's what I was trying to say there. I didn't realize that for a long time. But anyway, you've heard too many words tonight, and I would really like my message to only be music cannot be expressed or delivered in words. Education is one thing. I don't believe there are masters. I believe there are students. Some students work harder than others. In jazz, the narrative is what carries the music forward, and the narrative is the players playing. And that's what, if somebody hears I could name too many people, I don't want to choose one out of the list. If you hear something and it changes you, it's because what you heard was someone who became an innovator, and they became an innovator by hard work on themselves, not so much work on the instrument. If I get students and I ask them what they want, they usually say, I want to play like you. And I say, I can't teach that. I don't want to teach this. Do you know how many chiropractors I need? You know I carry my own mattress with me on tour? Why would I teach anyone to kill themselves? You have to be crazy enough to feel it and do it, and not even notice that you're doing it. So I teach someone how to jump up and down on stage, or I teach them how to move in a strange way and hold their hands completely wrong and screw up their body. I have a film of myself playing with Charles Lloyd, and I can see what my hands are doing, but I can't see my head. My head was whipping around at such a fast pace that, even the film is just a blur. It's not a head. Okay, so I wish I had only a few words to say. I was going to say something about my mother. Let me do that. And I'll never take 45 minutes of your time. I'm going to guarantee that I will not take 45 minutes. When I was 2 years old, I played on the kitchen table with celery sticks. So my first instrument was the drums. Then I ended up with a drum set, and eventually found myself playing to the Ahmad Jamal White album because there was so much space in the music. I could actually, I didn't mess with it. It was just hanging there beautifully. But okay, when I was 2, I did the celery stick thing, and my mother discovered at also the same age that I was playing along with melodies coming from the radio, and she thought, well, this is strange. And found a teacher who would teach a 3-year-old. But if I had asked her, Mom, I want to be a jazz master when I grow up, She would have said, you can be anything you want. Now, my father would have said, why would you want to be a musician? Musicians can't make a living. And in fact, he did say that. He did say that until finally I was well known and he saw that I was making a living. But then he said, you don't have insurance on your house? Yes, I said, well, but Dad, that's just like me, isn't it? I just, okay, I'll get insurance. So I got insurance. But my mother's saying that you can be whatever you want to be. She was the liberal in the family. My mother and my father was a conservative. I have to give her credit tonight because 5 minutes before I left the house, she's 94, 5 minutes before I left my house, I gave her a call. And she still sounds like a kid. She's unbelievable. And so I thanked her, and actually I wanted to thank her in front of people. My father is not alive now. So back to the music for a minute. Jazz is a narrative. It goes from one player, like how many tenor players suddenly sound like Coltrane after Coltrane dies? Every single one for a while. It's like they're trying to be this guy. No, that isn't what Coltrane would have wished. Coltrane would have wished they learned to be themselves. For as, I think he used to get to the gig early and practice for hours before they even started to play. And all this is really wrong of me to continue talking because the first thing I said is correct. The music cannot be anything but itself. You can't actually, I went to Berkeley, I got kicked out of Berkeley. Let's see, does that make me a potential jazz master? No. I had a trio that was made up of dropouts from Berkeley. Oh, that's a bad sign. That means education and Keith don't get along very well. And then I got fired from my first job with the trio because somebody came up to me and said, can you play something bouncy? I thought that's what we were doing. I thought it was pretty bouncy. But I got fired, and before I was fired, we had one last night in our apartment, the trio, and we were playing anything that made a sound in the apartment and recording it. So it was like avant-garde brooms and wastebaskets and garbage cans. And it was a moment I won't forget. And neither was the getting fired thing because it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful to be fired from that gig. That wasn't what I was meant to do. How I got out of Allentown, where I was born, many gifts have been given to me, and I've accepted them one at a time as they came, and I'm just lucky. I'm lucky to have said, okay, I'll accept this, I'll take this, I'll do this. And now I'm busy thinking of how much there is to transform in music and how mediocre the world can become. The world outside of music is becoming a bunch of screens. People are becoming used to I can't say bad sounds, but they're used to, they don't know what they're listening to anymore. Back when there wasn't so much media, I mean, people went out looking for a musical experience, and they'd go to a record store, and as in my case, luckily the New York City Public Library rented records. And I heard every composer, every musician that I never heard of, I rented from the library. And the last thing I'm going to say, I hope, because I can talk 45 minutes now that I think about it. As a matter of fact, I thought in the beginning, before I came here, I thought, I got about 45 ways to come at this. And if I start with one of them, it's going to connect to the rest of the 44 waves, and it will never stop. So I forgot actually what I was going to say. Hey, that's very good though, see, because if you're about to play a chord, if you're about to play a chord that you're familiar with from the past, and you've heard yourself play it before, and that's when you forget it, that's perfect. That's improvisation. But of course, in real life, if you're saying something for the only time you get a chance to say it, and you forget it, it's not so good. Thank you all for staying so long. Have a good night.
And now to perform Keith Jarrett's original composition, Memories of Tomorrow, please welcome Bill Frisell and Jason Moran. Tonight's honorees have given us so much to be thankful for. Their live performances and recordings have given countless hours of joy to listeners around the world. And through their work, they've elevated their fellow musicians and composers, urging them on to greater heights. As educators, they've changed lives with the gift of jazz.
And we've enjoyed some beautiful, soulful music tonight. We've witnessed you right in the way of my teleprompter taking the camera shot. You got it? Take the picture so you can you move out of the way of that? I love you. You're my friend. We've witnessed some new collaborations. You know, I hope you got a good shot. And we've seen some of our greatest elders perform with some of the brightest stars of our next generation. See, I can see it. Now we'd like to pay very special honor to a man who has spent close to 2 decades championing the NEA Jazz Masters program as director of jazz and opera at the NEA. And believe me, he has sacrificed a great deal in dedication to jazz, to this country, and to the arts. We all owe him a deep debt of gratitude. He is always behind the scenes, but if it were not for his tireless efforts, this program would not be anywhere near what it is. On behalf of your friends here at Jazz at Lincoln Center and jazz musicians and fans all over the world, we'd like to present this token of our thanks to Mr. Wayne Brown. Please put your hands together.
Keep the music alive.
In closing, we would like to once again celebrate the jazz continuum by playing a composition by one of our most active and senior masters. This piece is fittingly entitled New Picture. Please welcome 2013 Thelonious Monk Competition winner, Melissa Aldana. Chris Pattershaw on the piano. Russell Hall on the bass. Jameson Ross on the drums. And 2003 NEA Jazz Master, the one and only, Jimmy Heath.
Is this one on? Yes. I just want to say that this composition we're about to play is one of mine entitled New Picture. And this is the new picture of jazz, Melissa Aldana on the saxophone.
has been an incredible night, and it was a great opportunity to join you on such a beautiful night in a beautiful venue. So I want you to join me in thanking all of the musicians who performed this evening, our presenters as well, and also the staff from the NEA and Jazz at Lincoln Center.
Most of all, we thank all of you for joining us tonight and for coming together to celebrate jazz music and our newest class of NEA Jazz Masters. Thank you. Thank you, NEA. Thank you, NEA Jazz Masters. Thank you, Soledad. It's been a great privilege and pleasure. Good night, all.